What is going on, everyone from Belly Up? Thank you all for tuning in with us tonight. We're trying something a little bit different. We're going with a post game, and my name is Parker Ainsworth, and I'm joined by a couple of fans of the two teams. Actually, I got Thomas Christian and Antonio Perez. Antonio, how are we doing tonight, buddy? You okay?
No, we're doing good, man. We're doing good. It's not the end of the world, you know. We're not down 3-2 or 3-1, whatever it is. It's a best of three at this point, so it's a
Fair,
dogfight. We
fair
good.
enough, Thomas. I feel like you're probably doing a little bit better than that. How are you doing?
Well, I was going to say, I feel like I'm the one that's about to have a heart attack. We were this close to being down 3-1. And it's just, I'm not really convinced that we're the best team in this series, but somehow we're 2-2. I'll take it. We're going back to Chase Center, and that's it.
I gotcha. So we are 2-2 going back to Chase Center, and only to stick with going with what might be in the negative and then jump into the positive. Antonio, talk me through what were your immediate first reactions? Like the game just ended. How are you feeling after looking at that one?
Boston, from a coaching standpoint and a player standpoint, nothing's changing. I talked about it on the High Low Sports podcast that they need to close out games better. That can slide against the Miami Heat. That can slide against beat up Milwaukee and the Nets, but that won't slide against Steph Curry and Golden State. The last 5 minutes of the game, they scored 3 points. And you have two guys who are averaging 22 points per game this series, and they're both actually playing as good as everyone thinks Jaylen Brown is playing. He is also, along with Tatum, playing subpar. They need to find better shot selection down the stretch. But they've been road warriors all season. They've been bounce back players all season. It's obviously the NBA Finals. Everything is a must win, but you know, it's 2-2. It's a best of 3. Golden State's got to get 2 more. So, you know, it's not like they took a lead in the series. They knotted it up. I mean, obviously you'd rather go up 3-1, but not the end of the world. You got the guys who are going to bounce back. But they're going to get bounced in 6 if we keep playing off of Steph Curry. I don't know if it's like a change up they're trying to. I don't think playing off of him is going to make Steph Curry think, wow, I'm so wide open. This just is so much pressure. I don't know. I don't know what's going through the head of the bigs.
I think we can talk more about Steph. I'm sure that's what Tom is going to talk a lot about. I am interested in what coverages and what the Boston Celtics are thinking there. Thomas, you mentioned you almost had a heart attack, but you've got to have a lot of good thoughts after what just happened because you escaped, it felt like.
Well, we escaped, but this was the game, I thought, where, you know, leading into this, there was a lot of media talking head talk about, you know, we knew what Curry was doing. We knew that he was going to be the one carrying the Warriors here. But the Draymond Green piece of this, the Klay Thompson piece of this, we knew that going into this finals that at some point Kerr was going to have to put out a lineup that was going to need to deliver a win. And we knew that in doing that, it is a very likely chance that either Draymond Green or Klay Thompson is going to spend some amount of time on the bench late in the fourth quarter situation. So the fact that Draymond Green was out of the lineup for, I don't even know how long he was in and out because they just kind of decided to do a bunch of different random rotations there. Obviously, there's a lot of logic to that, but this was that game where Kerr decided, I have to get the win here. I can't, you know, leave this squad out here just because Draymond Green won me a ring a few years ago. I can't just keep him out there through thick and thin. I'm actually going to adjust the lineups here a little bit. And that I thought was, sort of definitely kind of a point, a little bit of a dividing point in this Warriors dynasty, in this Warriors, or whatever you like to call it, in the Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Stephen Curry era, for sure.
Well, and we can talk more about the split up. I think we should start with talking about the football-esque substitutions on the stretch because that feels very, very fresh. And frankly, you know, we're recording this live after the game's over. If you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, and we may actually hear more about that from the post-game stuff as stuff hits Twitter as we roll on. So I think we should start there and then just go into more globally looking at what Steph did over the course of the game. I have to say, and this may be from my own playing sports background and playing a lot of football, that the idea of being able to regularly get those subs in like that was wild to me. That you could truly go offense defense with Draymond like that felt odd. And then on top of all of it, you actually had Draymond end up with like at least one that jumps out on the paper to me, huge offensive rebounds, right? Like you don't want him in there for offense, and he gets a huge offensive rebound on the stretch. He has on a fast break, my buddy Ryan and I were texting back and forth, and he gets into the paint and down the stretch, which collapses the defense just enough to find Steph Curry. And it's like, that's 2 vintage Draymond plays out of nothing. Antonio, as you're watching it, did you see that back and forth with the offense defense substitutions that felt football-esque, or what were you watching those last 4 minutes?
No, I definitely, that was like one of the things running through my mind. I'm like, he probably wants fresh legs. He's playing players by situation. It did feel football-esque. As an Eagles fan, I know they like to rotate D tackles, and that usually gets best results. Throwing in Draymond when you need him there, and he, admittedly, outside of those last couple minutes, like you mentioned with a couple vintage Draymond plays, he was kind of putting up another stinker. But that was a good job by Kerr. I think for the most part of the series, I think he was being outcoached by Udoka, who Udoka's have been outcoaching everyone he's played so far, I believe. But I think Kerr down the stretch, he outcoached him. I like the rotations, having your guys fresh legs, especially how you mentioned, I believe before we started, how Curry had 40 plus, no one else touched 20. I think that was a good call by Kerr, playing people very situationally, having fresh legs. While Boston, you can't really do that. Like, there's not really a guy that you can like switch into, and then they blew their last time out on a challenge that had no shot at winning. But I don't know if Udoka had a chance, like really had a choice to at that point with where the game was heading.
Yeah, and I had to say, like, I watch a lot of Warriors basketball because they're at the top of the league. I'm trying to pay attention to the top of the league, teams that have a chance. Thomas, I don't, I guess, know for a fact that you watched all 82, but I feel like you watched a lot closer to it than I did. Have you seen this out of Kerr before, this back and forth thing down the stretch there?
No, I can't say that I have. And I would say that I think that's kind of a testament to this being one of the weaker just Warriors teams in general of those, teams that we see like winning so much, right? And just sort of the difference it is between 2015 and 2022 in Klay Thompson and in Draymond Green specifically. Draymond Green was almost a completely different player just, a few years ago because of sort of his shooting has fallen off, his athleticism has fallen off. He really looked outclassed, I thought, there against the superior athletes in the Celtics team, right? And it was just like, at points I was like, wow, I really am glad that we have Looney and Wiggins out there and not Draymond, just because I feel a lot more confident in the ability of Wiggins and Looney just to hold up athletically. And I also, you talk about Draymond Green's offensive rebounding. I mean, let's talk about Wiggins and just like the offensive rebounds he grabbed and just the putbacks that he was able to do. Because this game we were down really late into that game, but it was 90-94, and all of a sudden Wiggins grabs an offensive board, gets the pushback 92-94, and that's what sparks that final run for the Warriors that closed the game. But if it wasn't for all these like little clutch plays by just all three of those guys in general, like this game is we can talk about the 40 points from Steph Curry and the different shooting we have from Poole and Klay Thompson, but the people down in the dirty work doing that rebounding on the paint, that's what really I think won us the game. I checked at halftime, the rebounding was even, and I was just like, oh my God, that is a win for the Warriors if we can just keep that rebounding battle even or within about 5 rebounds, just because I believe in sort of our offense a little bit more than I do the Celtics. But if we could just get a few extra looks or just eke out even a similar amount of shot attempts, that is what can help us stay even in this series. And I thought they did that tonight.
Yeah, and I think rebounding was huge, especially considering I kind of want to move into talking to some about the lineups, and we're going to get to Steph Curry, I promise. People think I hate that guy. I'm not going to avoid him. I'm going to get to him. But the rebounding especially, the Celtics are just across the board bigger. Tatum looks like he's like 6'10", Brown's 6'7", 6'8". Like they're just across the board a bigger team. And the move for Golden State after the loss in Game 3 was to take Looney out of the starting lineup, put Otto Porter in. Otto Porter's like 6'8" himself. He's a small ball 5, but he's not a true 5. And at first I'm thinking, what are they doing, right? Otto Porter is not Iguodala of 2015. This is not like, what are we doing here? And what ends up happening is, for whatever the rotation, however you want to talk about that shaken out, Looney gets 28 minutes, whereas in game 3, he only got 13 minutes. And so he actually gets twice as many minutes out there on the floor. I think that's a big part of this. I also like to talk some about Robert Williams, looking like he may have retweaked that knee, and that could have been big implications, as Antonio pointed out. This is now a 3-game series. So from a couple of fronts, I guess I want to say, what did you think at the start of the game when you saw the new lineups? And then what did you think about the way that they played out, Antonio?
I remember I got the notification Otto Porter will be playing. I would think if they were going to make any small ball changes, what most teams would like to do, they just simply, like the Warriors of the past, they would just simply roll with the best 5 that they got. Like they would throw Iggy in there along with like KD, Steph, Clay, Draymond. But I thought Porter, there's a lineup that Golden State runs. It's not that starting 5, but they'll run Peyton, Curry, Draymond, Wiggins, and Porter, and it's really effective defensively, especially on the 3 main ball handlers, Smart, Brown, Tatum. I think having Porter out there, and looking at it, you would sacrifice rebounding, but they actually didn't. They had huge offensive rebounds down the stretch, not by him, but I think his spacing affected the game. In fact, I helped Curry get to 40. That better spacing, being able another screen body with Looney, who's got caught for a couple offensive fouls. When I think he's setting the most illegal screens actually, but yeah, I think Porter's spacing it helps out a lot. He's not shooting amazing or anything, but the Celtics they respect everyone out there shooting besides Draymond Green. So yeah, I think it was a small tweak, and it wasn't like the main factor because the wind came down the stretch, but I think it gave him more juice, and it just freshened things up, especially for Looney, who got maybe the mismatches on the rotational guys coming off the bench.
Thomas, again, you watch these guys more than any of us. Talk me through when you see that they're not starting Kevon Looney, they're not going to Poole for a death lineup, they're going to Otto Porter. Would you have imagined? I just pulled up the stat sheet on ESPN.com. That they did out-rebound. The Warriors did out-rebound the Celtics. Would you have imagined that kind of a game was coming after finding that out before the game started? Tom,
No,
if you're there.
So I was lagging out that whole question. I was assuming it was for me. But the third quarter of game 3, right at the very beginning, it was they're about to get blown out, and you saw Kerr use a lineup that was similar to the starting lineup, where he basically just put 4 shooters out there and was like, hey, we're going to just try and make this a game by hitting some 3-pointers. And I felt like coming out of that game 3, that was sort of the logic here in this game 4 lineup, was the same thing where we don't really know how to compete with these guys. We're just going to try and hit a bunch of 3-pointers. And you saw how they started out. It was, I was terrified at the start of this game in the first quarter as a Warriors fan. It was 4-11, I think, at some point. And then we made it a 12-12 game. And from there, it was competitive the rest of the way. But, that 4-11, I think it was about 8 minutes into the first quarter, I thought we were about to get blown out for a second straight game and that it was completely over. And one of the other adjustments is that I was really surprised by with not having Looney out there is that when you have Draymond out there, you're putting him on the perimeter more than they're putting him in the paint right now. So when there's a shot attempt coming out, the rebound doesn't fall to Draymond. It has to, like, their substitute for rebounding in the starting lineup was like Steph Curry today. They got 10 rebounds, and it's just they have to out hustle everybody in order to get these rebounds because Draymond Green is not able to stay in the paint. So when Kevon Looney is out there as well, and he's a much more switchable defender and a much more apt defender as well. So having him out there, it just bolsters that rebounding a lot more. Having Porter out there, I disagree with the move, but I understand in the context of game 4 hadn't happened yet. We're coming out of game 3 where you took a bad loss. Trying anything to get the offense started as early as possible by Kerr. I thought that was what the move indicated a lot more than going away from rebounding or to try and survive on the rebounding battle. I mean, Otto Porter Jr. is not really much of a rebounder himself. He got 1 tonight. So that to me was much more of what that move was about.
Yeah, and speaking of Draymond, did y'all really we already talked about the lineup a little bit, but were you all surprised to see him get back in the game? I thought down the stretch there, it looked like he was going to sit almost the whole fourth quarter, and then he comes in and gets a couple of offensive rebounds, one huge one. Until that point, he'd kind of played pretty poorly. Like, were you all surprised to see him jump back in the game?
Do you think he's in their head? Do you think that Boston is in Draymond Green's head right now?
Only if there's
With
space.
These, like, F Draymond chants and everything else, and just trying to egg him on. Like, I wonder if it's a little bit of that.
The only reason I would say that they're not is because there's not enough space, because Draymond is also clearly in his own head.
Fair enough.
Antonio, you're a Boston guy. That crowd can get raucous. Did you think Draymond was ever going to go back in the game tonight, or was that a surprise to you?
I think obviously Kerr has a lot of trust in him because when he's playing a bad game, it's like just there's nothing he's really like. Oh, his value isn't in the stat sheet. Well, when his stat sheet's looking like a below 5 triple single, then yeah, his value really isn't on the stat sheet. But I think for the most, I thought he was going to come back in at some point, whether it be like how they had it at the end of rotations, coming in for defense. I thought at some point he would have to come back in. He's one of your 3 best players or 4 best players. And even if you need big offense, he's the best playmaker, I believe, on either team at the moment. And honestly, about like the in his head thing, I think there's only one person who's like potentially in his head right now, and that's probably Jaylen Brown, because I've never seen someone get switched onto Draymond Green and then just tell everyone get out the way. and it's amazing because last series Jaylen Brown was like Victor Oladipo was giving him hell, and now he's got a dude who is like the front runner for the Defensive Player of the Year before he got hurt, and he's just scoring on him every single time. But I mean, outside of that, I thought Draymond was coming back in. He's too experienced. He means too much to this team to not be in there down the stretch along with Curry, Thompson.
Fair enough. I just thought it looked like it was like they're doing all this without him in, and then they put him. I was like, oh, this is a mistake, and then ended up not being a mistake. We can't keep dancing around any longer. Steph Curry had the game tonight, right? Like, so historically speaking, not that he hasn't had 40 points in a playoff game before, but in the times that the Golden State Warriors had won the finals, the big ding on Steph Curry was those weren't really his best series, right? Yes, he had a couple good games at the end of the 2015 series, but for the first part of that series, he really struggled, right? In 2017 and 18, when it was time to get a do-or-die bucket that gave Kevin Durant the ball and kind of got out of the way, the most memorable shots in both series being the, like, 30-foot pull-up he hits over Durant hits over LeBron, right, or whatever it is. They're both weirdly at the left wing. For whatever reason, that's what sticks out in people's mind. That's like, if you're going to be critical of Curry, that's about the only thing you can draw, right? Because of those kind of moments, he's hadn't won the Finals MVP or whatever. Tonight was every bit of the Finals MVP performance, right? Tonight was every bit of the shut the bleep up, we're done with that conversation performance out of him. And I said it myself on Twitter. He had 33 points through the first 3 quarters, and people were saying you can't sit him. And I was like, look, in the first 3 games, he had 6 points in the entire fourth quarter. He only didn't play the fourth quarter of the blowout game in game 2, but in games 1 and 2, games 1 and 3, the games they lost, he had 6 total points in the fourth quarter. Like, he might need the blow at the start of the fourth. He got a shorter blow than normal, and he got out there and he put 10 points up in the fourth and got himself over 40. I forget what the layup looked like exactly. We had a 2-pointer, and they had the big 3 with Derek White in his face, and they had some free throws down the stretch, right? He ends up with 10 in the quarter. Thomas has, I think, been burning to talk about Steph Curry in this moment because you've been adamant that this is the guy he is. And so I want to give you the floor for a minute. Like, this was the Steph Curry game. Talk us through it.
Well, it's just, I think that 2-pointer, I don't think it was a layup. I'm pretty sure it was a bank shot. Because I remember he came down to the.
Oh, was that in the fourth? Was it? It was.
Sure.
Yeah.
It was just like,
I think it was a floater.
Old school.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was a nice little floater. Had no arc, just got right in there. Yeah, I think that's the one y'all are talking about. I'm not sure.
But this whole performance, I mean, I was gonna try and talk about that bank shot, but thanks for the correction here. But that shot to me was what the kind of performance was, because you don't think Steph Curry bank shots, you think Steph Curry all these no netters type situations. But as soon as he's hitting the bank shot, I'm like, okay, so this is the zone for him. And obviously 7 for 14, 14 to 26 from the floor. that's just kind of what we come to expect for Steph Curry. I don't know if I really buy the idea that Steph Curry, wasn't the best player in that first finals, that he definitely should have won finals MVP over Andre Iguodala. The idea, or if you're going to give it to Andre Iguodala just for that, the small ball lineup sort of thing, then just give it to whatever assistant coach suggested the lineup to Steve Kerr. I don't understand how you give it to Andre when clearly the best player and the guy who won the MVP is Steph Curry. So, I mean, that's kind of my first point, but just in general,
I don't mean to digress and like argue. I just mean that that's the argument is all. Like if people ding him, that's what they say, right?
Well, I mean, I'm very familiar with sort of the flack that he's taken over the year as a guy who's defended Curry for a really long time.
Right.
But this is what this iteration of the team needs, because there's no other player, like you guys said, that scored over 20 points. And, Klay Thompson doesn't really look like the old Klay Thompson as much. Maybe he will next season, but we're in the finals right now. Same with Draymond Green. And, some of these other players like Jordan Poole, it's almost like, he ended up with a great shooting numbers, but 2 for 7 from 3-point range. That's not like the third of these Splash Brothers that we need him to be. And for him personally, like, he went 2 for 2 and then 0 for 5. So that's not that 2 for 7. It really should have been like a 2 for 4 or a 2 for 5. The fact that he kept chucking up shots at that end, I kind of disagree with that decision. The other part of it was just, if he hadn't done any of this, then the Celtics would just not be here. So I think if he's going to win this finals, he's obviously going to be the finals MVP. And, this is kind of going to be the performance that you look back on. I don't know if you guys are going to agree with me here, but Steph Curry is 34 years old, and this is like the best Steph Curry version that of the previous iteration. I've never seen a Steph Curry be as deadly as this playoff run, this finals.
And I'm going to throw it to Antonio in a second. I feel like this is the most like the Mamba mentality, or the savage, or the like relentless, the like, I need to do this on my own kind of guy. And it's like you said, he has to. It's the first time we're seeing that Steph Curry in the finals, because in 2015 they were the better team. 2016, I'd also argue they're the better team. Whatever. 17, 18, I felt like that guy was Durant, and that's not a knock on Curry. That's just how great Durant and that team was. Antonio, I want to give some solace. Steph Curry did it to my Rockets a lot. It wasn't in the NBA Finals; it was in the round before. But I've felt the effect of what he just did. I know what you're going through a little bit. Talk me through that Steph Curry performance on the other end.
Curry, I noted this to my brother. Like, obviously, us as an NBA community are past the point of, he only shoots, and I believe his game has grown so much from his first finals. He's so much more aggressive getting to the rim, and he's much smarter on defense. While they are still trying to attack him, his improved aggressiveness on defense and willing to try has also upped his game. I'll give him 99% of the credit for his performance, and then the other 1% is the Celtics bigs for continuing to back up on him. But no, Steph Curry played amazing. I thought ever since that 73 win season, I thought he was the second greatest point guard of all time. And I don't know what necessarily he would need at this point to get over Magic, but yes, if the Warriors were to close out the series, he's by far the Finals MVP, and this should be remembered as one of the greater Finals MVP runs, because sure, people will look back on it and be like, oh, he's got 2 Hall of Famers. He is a kid who's Jordan Poole is probably going to be All-Star in the coming years, and hey, he's got a Hall of Fame coach, but that's not really the context. Like, he really got to look like Klay wasn't himself, Dre wasn't himself, Poole was still learning. This was like the most, I guess, I wish Tatum would pull out one of these, but this was Curry's most Kobe-like performance, and I think I'm going to go out there, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to prove like I'm that guy. Like,
Counterpoint, I would argue that Jason Tatum going 6 for 23 or whatever it was would actually feel fairly Kobe-esque.
He was one missed shot away. Tatum was one missed shot away from going 8 for 24.
which is the Kobe, not the Kobe stat line because of his numbers, but that is eerily
That would
similar
be-
to some of the
quite
stuff
the
we've seen.
salute.
No, I think that Steph Curry I think Steph Curry will always be a fascinating history study. Winning the Finals MVP this year would obviously cement some of that and take some of the discussion out of it. I think the interesting thing in looking at Curry will always be the Finals MVP. How do you value that? Is he like, this is a great team? All of those kind of things. But also, I think the interesting thing about Curry will always be that, like, there are days I don't think he cares at all, and there are days I think he cares a whole lot about it. And I can't tell which one it is. And I think that the deal is today, you could tell at some point in the third, he was like, if we go down 3-1, I'm the one who wears this. Like, he was very clear.
Yeah.
He was like, if we go down 3-1, this doesn't fall to Steve Kerr. This doesn't fall to Draymond. Like, they'll joke on them. This hits me harder than it hits all of y'all. So we're not doing it. It was very, very evident to me. The quote he had in the preseason, was it preseason? Maybe it was last season. It was like, I've got nothing left to prove, but a lot left to do, or something like that, right? That was
and that's a good way to look at it. That term, he has nothing left to prove, is thrown around a little too much. Like, they throw that at Giannis. So I was like, well, Giannis might have a track line to be one of the greatest players of all time. Like, don't say he has nothing left to prove, but he has a lot to accomplish.
And with Curry's night, I mean, I think the deal was, even in some of their big finals or big playoff series wins, he has, get out to a big lead and he gets to coast a little bit. And he couldn't do that tonight either. It was truly impressive and spectacular. He's a one of one. He had 43 points. We haven't even talked about the stripes yet, but you could argue we ought to have a couple more free throws on a couple of those threes he fell down on. Now, I still don't know how we judge the guy jumping forward versus backwards. I guess I've been wrong on that, like 98% of the time, but he certainly has an argument, I think, to get a couple more free throws on those as well. And those are on relatively important possessions. He does have to win this series, though, for all of that to count towards the thing, right? This could very well, if they lose the series in 6, just be a great single game in a series that, otherwise they lost. And as we look forward, what game 5 is not till Monday. We're recording Raptors game on Friday night. I guess if you're in Antonio's house, that's actually early Saturday morning. If you're looking at game 5 Monday, I'll start with Boston, what tweaks, I think you've hinted at one, what tweaks do you think you got to make to take away game 5?
Outside of the obvious, I think Ime could time his rotations a little better. There's just times where maybe you need both Brown and Tatum. I believe down the stretch, if you're going to sit Tatum, let Brown get at least a touch, down the stretch. Same thing with Tatum. If you don't have smart playmaking, have one of them two doing it, as Brown has done a pretty good job this series. Derek White needs to, not really an adjustment. He just needs to keep going to the rim, but maybe keep his head up a little more. He got his shot blocked a lot of times, head into the rim, but I'll always appreciate the aggressiveness. And guys, they just need to do a better job switching on defense. There was a play, I believe it was part of Golden State's big run. Curry's coming down, Brown and Tatum gravitate towards him. I'm like, okay, that's great, but you guys left open Klay Thompson, who's one of the 3 best shooters in NBA history, regardless of how he looks right now. So they just need a little more awareness on defense, a little more moving the ball consistently on offense, better timely rotations, and obviously, if Steph Curry is getting a high screen, you should probably step up on it and not worry about the roller, because if you blitz Steph Curry, chances are that pass isn't even going to get there. So, yeah.
I saw an interesting take on the play of the screen. We can talk about in a second, but I actually want to hear the opposite side of this. So, Thomas, if you're the Warriors going into game 5, obviously it's 2-2. You got 2 of the last 3 at home. You feel okay, but you also lost game 1 at home. Boston hadn't lost back-to-back games yet this playoffs. I guess neither has Golden State, but if that were to be the trend, Boston wins the series, so you don't want that. Talk me through, if you're Golden State, are you just banking on Steph Curry getting 40+ to save you, or what are you doing to make sure you take game 5 while you're at home?
I think you're looking at the Kevon Looney minutes a lot, and you're thinking, how do we make sure that he is on the floor for longer stretches of time? Even the 28 minutes tonight, I felt like we could have given him even more and just lived to help that. It's such a swing of momentum when Robert Williams gets these blocks. There he's just basically swatting like a fly out of the air, the basketball. It's just absolutely deflating if you're the Warriors. Or I think Kevon Looney is a great way to combat that. Just the smartness that he plays with, that can really disrupt sort of the Celtics boxing out. He really knows how to kind of get in position whenever he sees a shot go up from Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, or Steph. So to get that offensive rebound, and just in general, him like totally floating the rebounding battle has been huge. I don't know what you do with Bjelica at this point. We saw him take 9 minutes up of the rotation, and I was just, he looked all right, but then he also played, I think, in game 2, a stretch in the first quarter, but then he never came back in. So I think if I'm Steve Kerr, I would decide, like, am I gonna put Bjelica in for an extended stretch, or am I gonna give those minutes to somebody else who would look a little bit like Otto Porter Jr. only playing 15 minutes tonight? I would have liked to see those minutes go a little bit more in his direction. I imagine that you could get a lot more production out of a guy like him than what happened tonight. And same with Gary Payton II. Just in general, they're able to even put him onto Jaylen Brown and have Gary Payton II hold his own a little bit more in terms of the matchups. So, Stephen Curry putting up a 40-game piece, that's obviously going to help us win the game, right? So, you don't want to lose the game in which your best player goes for 40. But also going forward, I don't know if I can actually count on him doing that again, because obviously Boston's going to go back and make adjustments. They got 3 days to watch the game film, so that they're going to take advantage of that and come back swinging. After that, it would just be getting Klay Thompson and Jordan Poole a few more touches, maybe a little bit more in rhythm. Obviously, both of them finished with decent percentages, but I still would like to see a bit more production. Or just the audaciousness of those two, and how their shooting can get at some points, because we didn't see that tonight.
Yeah, I think it's interesting on a couple fronts. One, I think that you got to hope that Poole plays good enough defense to keep him on the floor longer. I think they're a little bit better offensively with him out there. But Marcus Smart, I guess he did Steph Curry as well, but he, for whatever reason, just could get to the top of the key, put the ball in his right hand, and just go on Jordan Poole. And they were well spaced, so there wasn't necessarily a giant big behind him, but that I think is problematic straight line defense. I guess as I look at the series, I think the big thing to me is going to be those role guys. You hope role guys step up at home. We saw what Boston's role guys did in game 1 in San Francisco. We haven't really had a great role guy game out of Golden State in the same way. I mean, they ran away with game 2, and so I guess you could argue any one of those guys, but the same way we had the Horford in game 1, or whatever you want to talk about in game
White.
3. Derek White. Don't think we've had that guy for Golden State yet, and I worry that the guy doesn't exist. I think Steph could give you 40 in 2 of the next 3 games. He is that kind of a player. I just think that's hard to bank on, especially when, like, theoretically, while I would argue he's not the best defender on Boston, I think that speaks to their defense. Marcus Smart is the defense player of the year, and we'll have that assignment down the stretch of major games, right? I guess tonight he got switched a little bit up on some screens at the top of the key. I picked Golden State in 7 to start the series. I weirdly feel like that's still on the table. I don't mean to write it off. It's just seeing Golden State have to fight so hard to get this game tonight. It worries me a little bit about that. That said, schematically, I agree with the drop idea that Antonio said, that their bigs are in too deep of a drop. Like, you don't need any kind of a drop with Steph Curry coming off of the screen. And I read something on Twitter, and I'm trying to find it and can't find the person to credit it with. So if that ever gets back to whoever that was, I'm sorry, I can't find the tweet. Arguing in several tweets, and it was articulate, that the drop coverage is actually to throw off Draymond and Klay and these screeners. That the idea is that let Curry get 40, wear himself out, and we're going to make sure that the other guys don't do it. And frankly, that's kind of how it's played out. Now, I can't tell if that's analysis as to what's happening or if that's actually a sound strategy. strategically, it sounds like when Popovich played the old D'Antoni Suns, he would let Steve Nash score a bunch of points, and he'd get like 40 and like 5 assists, and that would be the trade-off there. And Tony, you've been advocating to stop the drop. You wanted to play up on Steph Curry. Do you see any benefit at all to dropping coverage on Steph Curry?
Not really, because I think every single time I've seen it, he's hit his shot. Like, I think every single time they went to play off, I think he's hit the shot. And you can say, like, you can keep saying, oh, we'll let Steph beat us, but we won't let anyone else beat us. Well, eventually, I think Klay Thompson's shots are going to fall. Eventually, Jordan Poole's shots are going to fall. Like, I don't know if you could really rely on that forever. And those two score in different ways. Like, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, they love to take over on the mid-range. They can get aggressive, get to the rim. But the only way those two are taking over is the three. And it takes 3 shots. That's 9 points. Like, it's a dangerous way to get hot, and I just don't think you can rely on them being cold forever, even if they haven't shown you otherwise. I think they'll just have to respect it, and obviously respect Steph as a shooter, because I hope some crazy stat nerd will release it, but I need to see shooting percentages on drop coverage.
Steph versus drop has to be pretty high right now.
At least 80%. Like, it's
Thomas,
insane.
As a Warriors guy, are you happy to see drop coverage? Are you like? Do you think that there's some way that this makes sense? Do you feel like that at some point the well is going to dry up on this? How are you feeling about it?
I'm gonna end up siding with Antonio here. So it's really difficult to feel a statistic in real time, right? You kind of get stuck in the moment of the make or the miss that just happened, and then that's going to be what carries on to the next. It's very difficult to sort of track these like macro shooting trends in the little tiny lineup adjustments. But for me, the way the drop coverage really impacts it is Draymond Green being 0 for 8 from downtown. So they just leave him wide open. And so when he gets the ball to do that little screen where the Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, or Steph Curry runs around him, gets the ball, and takes the shot, Draymond Green's open for 3 at that point. So he's gone 0 for 8. He's gone 0 for 2 in every single game. And, for the playoffs this season, he averages 1.6 3-point attempts. So if you're getting him 2 or above, I guess that's what you're trying to do, is just, get him to be taking more 3-pointers, because that's taking away 3-pointers from Klay Thompson or Steph Curry or Jordan Poole. But I don't know if that's really the strategy that I'm counting on to win us a few of these games, because like Antonio said, as soon as one of our shooters gets hot, it's really difficult to stop Golden State's offense. And what you're doing by playing drop is allowing them to get hot, by allowing them to get the easy looks. Once you see 1 or 2 go in, taking those harder shots, you feel a lot more confident that you're going to be able to get those when the basket looks a lot bigger, because you already have a few makes already in your back pocket. So, trying to get Draymond Green or these other non-shooters to take more jump shots, I don't know if it's going to work. But it's clearly getting the right result that it was intended for. But I'm not certain that it's still sort of making the impact, or actually like winning them any sort of rubber match here.
Well, and so as we head to the rubber match, I think both statistically speaking, I think it's something like 78 or it's almost 80% of the time in a tied 2-2 series, the winner of Game 5 wins the series, right? Almost every time, right? Game 5 is in the Bay. As I've mentioned, the Celtics have not lost back-to-back games. To date, the Warriors have not lost back-to-back games either in the playoffs, I don't think. Boston did win Game 1 in Golden State, but teams typically play better at home. So I guess we're all feeling kind of like, and I guess you can tell me if you disagree with this, that the winner of Game 5 wins the whole thing, right? And so I want to hear from each of you, and then I'll go third. Antonio, I assume you're taking the Celtics in Game 5. Why did the Celtics win Game 5?
Because they've yet to prove that they can lose 2 in a row. Well, I mean, they've yet to prove they can win 2 in a row very steadily. They've yet to lose back-to-back games. Since January, they've only lost back-to-back games twice, and one of those was a road game in Toronto where Smart, Brown, Al Horford, and Williams was out. So I believe the Celtics do take the lead. However, if either of these teams were to go down 3-2 and were to go on to win the series, I think I would pick Golden State to do that. But hopefully it doesn't get to that point. So I will take the Celtics to be road warriors again, as they've been the entire playoffs, bounce back and just don't beat themselves. It's the only way they'll ever lose, because when they are playing their brand of basketball, I think they're the best team in the world.
I'd agree. I think that the way they beat themselves tonight, we can talk about Steph Curry in the fourth, and I don't mean to take away from that on his offensive end. Boston took bad shots in the last 5 minutes. I mean, just bad basketball. They did not take
3 points to finish the game.
And and I don't mean to say that Golden State's defense has nothing to do with that, Thomas. That I don't mean to diminish your team either. It just felt like they were really fast. Like mid-range pull-ups with like 17 seconds on the shot clock. It's like you got a lot of time left. Like you can, even if that's not a great shot and they're forcing you into it, like you can find another one. I digress. Thomas, why does Golden State win Game 5? What happens?
I'm not picking Golden State to win Game 5. I'm picking Boston. Here's why. Wow. And I'm going to give you another side to this, because Antonio talked about sort of the more statistic side. Here's my thinking. I was on the ground in Game 1. I was reporting outside the stadium. I have work for a news station, so I was doing that. And there are so many more Celtics fans in Chase Center than there are Warriors fans in Boston. When I was editing footage of the Boston TD Garden crowd, it was all green. There was no yellow. There was no blue. It was all Boston fans. When you go to Chase Center, there's a lot more Boston fans. And let me tell you, around the bars, just around the Bay Area, a lot more Boston fans. So there's a very large Irish population in the Bay Area. And I mean, I'm part of it. So I know. And just in general, we're very drawn to the Celtics. I mean, if it was Celtics and some other Western Conference team, I would probably be rooting for the Celtics just for the simple fact that I'm Irish, and that's literally that's it. Literally that's it. But I don't know if I believe in the Chase Center home advantage in this series as much as I believe in that Boston advantage. And the other part of it is too the way that the home crowd in Boston has influenced the officiating, just in terms of like. It almost feels like intimidation, where that Boston crowd, it feels like it's about to leap out of the stands if the NBA referees make a bad call or make a call against Boston in some way. And I don't know if that's going to happen in Chase Center. We seem to be a little more keep our shirts tucked in, and I don't think that's going to be the same thing. So
here's the shame.
That alone.
And I don't mean to discredit. I think, again, you got boots in the ground. You following it much closer. The shame is I don't feel like that would have happened at Oracle. And like that hurts my heart a little bit. Like Oracle was a different beast. Darn. All right. Well, I'm not saying I'm picking the Warriors, although I did pick them in 7. So I guess that means I probably, if I'm trying to make myself right from the beginning, I will say I'm interested to follow in the next 2 days. I think everyone should look at what does Robert Williams' knee look like for the next couple days. It looked like he tweaked it. He went out of the game with about whatever that Steph Curry dancing back and forth was. And he did not come back in the game, so that didn't look like right. I would look at how that goes with him, what he looks like in the next couple of days, because obviously his impact is palpable. I would look at, as the game starts, what kinds of 2-pointers is Tatum attacking for? He's been hot to start the game in multiple games this series, but is he getting to the cup or is he hitting tough twos? Because tough twos get harder as the game goes on, as we've seen. Obviously, Jaylen Brown has been phenomenal. We haven't talked about him enough, but we're already 44 minutes in, so we'll leave it at he's been phenomenal. I would look at, on the road, you need to have a role player step up. Is that going to be Derek White, Al Horford, etc. Right? It's been 44 minutes. It's late on the East Coast. Let's go ahead and wrap it up a little bit. You're going to be talking about this series all weekend long, I'm sure. You both write about it for Belly Up Sports. Antonio, tell people where they can find you on the Twitter sphere.
On Twitter, you guys can find me at amperez_17, and then you could check out the podcast on Twitter at Sideline Summit. No underscores or anything. Yeah, I post from both accounts. Plenty of sports content and all that, and make sure you check out articles from Belly Up covering Celtics in a completely different perspective. Yeah, just y'all can find me there.
Thomas, you do a lot of different things to the NBA as well. Where can people find you at?
Yeah, go follow me on Twitter at ThomasGoatNBA. I write articles for Belly Up as well. I do more general NBA stuff, not necessarily following a specific team, but I obviously enjoy Antonio's articles a lot. I also host the Goated podcast, hosted by Electrocast Media. So go check that out. We're going to be doing our own breakdown of the Celtics Warriors finals tomorrow. That episode's gonna be coming out tomorrow. I'm probably gonna be recording that, staying up a little bit later tonight because I'm on the West Coast, so it's only like 9 p.m. here. It's kind of nice. Not to brag or anything, but I don't even know why they start Celtics games at 6 p.m. That should be criminal. It should be starting at 4 or 5. It's terrible. But I digress. You can also check out my show, California Today. Channel 77 if you're local to California. So I know you have to scroll really far down in the TV guide, but we do exist. That's California Today by NTDP TV.
I'm not on TV, but you can find the FN Sports Podcast wherever you get all your audio stuff. It comes out a couple times a week. I'm a teacher. It's grading sports. And the summer on summer break, it's not going to be quite as regular as far as what days it comes out. But it's the FN Sports Podcast. F like you're getting a flunking grade. You can also find me and all my personal stuff on Twitter at Painsworth512. I write primarily about basketball, but I write a bunch of different stuff as well. So at Painsworth512 on Twitter. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. It's a late one for the folks on the East Coast. I'm sure they're wishing one or two of those Steph Curry threes had not gone, and it might not feel so late, but here we are. Thank you for signing on. We'll talk to you all more next week as the finals continue. Adios.